this is Frederick from Detroit, Berlin. Today we're going to take a look at one of my favorite sequencers. I have many favorite things, favorite modules, favorite sequencers, favorite oscillators, favorite filters, and it's, again, a Doepfer sequencer that is actually my most favorite is the Dark Time. I even rank it higher than this one. This one is the A-155, the analog / trigger sequencer from Doepfer. I think it's different than the Dark Time, although they really seem to share a lot of similarities. The Dark Time being a standalone sequencer in kind of the same format. 2 rows of 8 potentiometers and some switches. Now the analog trigger sequencer, I think, has a few advantages over the Dark Time, and the Dark Time has more than a few advantages over this analog trigger sequencer. But if you need a sequencer in your modular system, I personally would highly advise this analog trigger sequencer, the A-155, and I'm going to show you how and why I come to this conclusion that this is just an amazing sequencer. It is big. I personally like big modules in a sense that you have room to wiggle the knobs. I don't like sequencers that have this kind of the same functionality but are like 8 HP wide and everything is tiny and the user interface is totally lacking. I prefer to have a substantial amount of HP for a module if it helps your creativity and your user experience. If it helps the user experience, I prefer a bigger module. I don't mind the room it takes in a case. Other people have other priorities and it might be a budget thing. Now I built this giant modular, so I have plenty of room, and I will probably expand on this when we reach 4,000 subscribers. In that case, please subscribe and give this video a like if you haven't already. But at 4,000 subscribers I will make something to make this ridiculously big modular synthesizer even bigger. Let's really quickly go over how this patch is working and then go over the module and see what all the controls do and what it's capable of. Then followed perhaps by a few other examples. So please bear with me. So what is happening with this patch? I'm, like usual, using the Moog Matriarch as a sound source. I'm using the trigger outputs, both filter and VCA envelopes. I'm triggering that by the gate out from the trigger sequencer. And I'm also using the triggers to actually give pulses to the cutoff of the filter, the left one and the right one. So once you hear it on the left side and then you hear it on the right side to create that stereo image, running it through an attenuator to kind of limit how far the filter opens, which enables me to play with how much it opens when it triggers. Then we got 2 rows of pots, 8 steps long. First row is controlling the pitch. Then we got the second row of pots, and they're acting as volumes because each pot has below it an input, and you can put a voltage signal or an audio signal in there, and then at the end you actually you just run through all the steps, and where the potentiometer is opened and there is a signal, then it will send it through to the output. And that's also going into the mixer to mix it with all the other oscillators from the Moog Matriarch. That's about it. So you get this kind of, yeah, little bit more complex sequence. And what's also happening on the second row of switches, when I put it in the up position, it will enable the trig output number 3, and that is going into the reset. So when I switch the bottom row of switches in the up position, then when it reaches that step, it will actually go back to step 1. Then I can control how many steps it will take. So from 8 I go to 5, maybe to 4 or to 3, and I can play around with that to make everything more interesting. And this sequencer, I've got 3 of them, which is totally not overkill. 2 of them are in my big modular behemoth system, and one of those sequencers is also in my performance live rig. And I really like to play around with it. It's very hands-on, and that's what I like so much about this this sequencer. You have oversight over what you're doing. It's really simple, it's just extremely effective. I'm clocking it, by the way, by an LFO, so yeah, it will run at the speed the LFO is running. And yeah, what can I say more? Let's maybe take a look at the A-155 Analog trigger sequencer from Doepfer. So we got step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. These are all identical. Let me just go over one row. So you got the upper and the lower switch. You can flip it up, then it will actually trigger trig 1. When the step passes the switch, it will trigger at the output. When you put it in the downwards position, it will trigger trig 2. Middle position, it will trigger nothing. Lowest one in the highest position will trigger trig 3. Lowest position will give a gate signal at the output. And the gate signal is as long as a whole step. Middle position, no output at all when the sequencer passes that position. Then we got the first row of potentiometers. When you turn it all the way up, you got full voltage control going out, and when you turn it all the way down, there is no voltage output. So it's from 0 to 100% of voltage control output, which will go to the pre or the post output. Pre output is actually before the glide. Post output is after the glide. Then we got the second row of potentiometers from 0 to 100%, and it will have a voltage going in there, a steady voltage. So when nothing is plugged in this input, then you just turn it up and you get the same result as with the top row. It just outputs a control voltage at the pre and post output. Also you got a glide control here, but more on that later. And when you input a signal, whether it be an audio signal or other kind of voltage signal going in, then it acts as an attenuator. It always acts as an attenuator at 100 and at 0%. It will take the voltage that's normalized going in, or it will take the voltage you plug in or the audio signal. You got 8 of those. After that you got the LEDs, which will light up if there is a trigger or no trigger. Also got the LEDs on the top to show you what step it's on. Then you got the 1 volt, 2 volt and 4 volt switch, which controls the range. So 1 volt will make 0 to 1 volt coming out of the module at the output, and at 200% will be 2 volt, 4 volt, it will be 4 volt. It's really straightforward, and this only applies to the top row of potentiometers. If we go to the second row, you got the scale, and the scale is kind of the same. You don't have a switch, but you have a potentiometer to actually turn up the range, and you really go from 0. So if this is turned all the way down and these are turned up, you will not get a signal because it's scale at 0, so 0% of 0 and it's 100% of 0, and 100% of 0 is still 0. So with scale at 0, it's really 0. And I should stop saying 0 because it's kind of annoying. When you gradually turn this knob up, then you will go from 0 to 1 volt, 2 volts, and so on. So you got a range, and here you got a switch. This one is just a switch, and you really have 0 to 1 volt, 0 to 2 volt, 0 to 4 volt. And with this it's so gradual that it's hard to limit it. And if you program the sequence and you accidentally hit it a little bit, then it's very hard to find the right spot again. With this one, if you have a sequence going and you accidentally go to another voltage, then you can just flip it back, and that's a little bit safer, but I think it's nice to have this variety. The glide control is like the portamento. So you got a portamento. If you turn this up, you get more glide between the steps. Then we got the trigger outputs, which output the trigger and the gate signal. Then you got the control section, which has a start, CV in. So if you feed it a signal, it will start the sequence. If you feed the second one a signal, it will stop the sequence. The third one is the clock. So you need to put something in here, whether it be an LFO or a MIDI clock interface. You got a reset control voltage input. When you send it a signal, it will reset the sequence, and you can actually use these triggers to reset the signal. Can even use them to stop the sequence. If you want 7 steps, you stop it at 8. So when the stop gets that pulse, you got just 7 steps and then it stops. Or if you put it like at 4 or 5, you get less steps and then the sequence stops. Can also do that manually by pressing this button. Then we got 2 of these. For each row of potentiometers, you got the pre-out and the post-out. Pre-out means it is not affected by the glide at all. Post-out means it's affected by the glide. Then you got the sample and hold control and the glide control. Now sample and hold control with an analog sequencer. When you got a trigger here, you got a trigger here, and you got a trigger here, and you got a long release or some kind of release time. Then if this is at an F, this is at a G, this is at an A, it will not only play the F, but you will actually hear the pitch go up to the G and then to the A if the release time is long enough. What the sample and hold does is that when you trigger this, it will actually hold this note, so it will hold the F until it is triggered again. And if you use it like that, then you can make more interesting melodies than have every step play when your synthesizer has a longer release. when it has no release and only a little decay, then sound will come out of your synthesizer when you actually are on this step, and when you reach this step your decay will already be gone. But if you have release, it will overlap, and then yeah, it will actually reach the next step, will go up or down in pitch. One way to prevent it is to put it at the same note. When you want a longer sustainable note that doesn't go up or down in pitch, then you just program the second one. When it needs to stay at the same note, just you program it at the same note. But to save all that time, you also can just send that gate signal not only to the ADSR but also to the sample and hold control. If you have a simple sequence going on and you send it to the sample and hold, these in-between steps, they don't matter anymore. If you have a long release, it will just stay on the note that is triggered and then go to the next note that is triggering. Same for the glide control. If you want a glide, you can give it a trigger, then the glide control will act or not act. So you can control when there is a glide and when there is no glide. You can use these trigger outputs in multiple ways, not only to trigger drum sounds or trigger ADSRs or AD envelopes. You can trigger also the glide control and the sample and hold control, and that way it's a pretty interesting and pretty capable sequencer with 2 rows of control voltage, and a nice way to control it. So let's make another patch. I put together another sequence, matriarch going through the expander filter from Doepfer, on which I will do an episode in the near future. Then all those outputs, because it has 8 separate filter outputs, and that is going into the analog trigger sequencer in the bottom row. So that's actually running through all those 8 outputs. And I'm also doing something with the switches. It's controlling the glide control and the sample and hold. So I will do like a little tutorial on that. Got a sequence on the matriarch running. It's running on the matriarch, the sequence, but it's also clocking the analog / trigger sequencer, the A-155 from Doepfer, and that will have effect on the expander filter. So I would say let's have a listen and let's see what we can make of it. Opening up the Moog matriarch filter. Expander is going in here. Which makes it possible to have a rhythm going on by turning these up and down. Scale will mute it or make it overdrive in an ugly fashion. So just I will be careful for that. This is a sequence going to the expander filter's frequency input. You can overdrive the signal coming in. Give it more Q. And now everything is in the off position going to the sample and hold. When I switch it on, it will change. And now I'm animating the filter frequency, and when I switch them all on, every knob will have an effect on the filter. If I switch it to the off position, it won't have any effect on the filter because it will still keep the voltage control from the previous step. Now let's make the glide function, and the glide control, it function when it's not getting a control voltage. When everything is active, you will have no glide. When it's not active, then you will have glide. We'll have all the steps glide. Some steps, one step and no glide at all. This sequence, now we have one row of switches controlling both. Trig 1 is a glide control, being glide if it is actually off. And trig 2 is controlling the sample and hold control, which means it will sample again and again and again when this switch is on. So now we get this one. But if we want to keep this for a few steps, so we can make nice can really make it sing doing it this way. This doesn't matter, this second row. When you use audio, put it in the pre-out. That's always best. With this module there are many options to mess about, and I think it's pretty interesting. It's a really simple but really powerful sequencer that can be expanded upon with the A-154 sequencer controller, and you can get another A-155 analog / trigger sequencer and have them linked in 4 rows of 8 steps or with some extra modules like a voltage controlled switch and a multiple. You can actually make it to 16-step sequencers. More on that later. I will make an episode explaining how to use it with the sequencer controller, so please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. We'll also make an episode on how to control 2 analog trigger sequencers, make them 16-step sequencers and how that works. This was the episode on the normal use of the analog trigger sequencer, and I think even without the sequencer controller, this is a brilliant trigger sequencer, analog sequencer that can bring so many joy to modular enthusiasts or professionals. The build is Doepfer quality, which is really good, and it's built like a tank. It is a big module, but like I said in the beginning of this video, it doesn't hold me back. I kind of like bigger modules over smaller modules because user interface is really important for me. It looks good and looks really technical like everything Doepfer makes. Give it a try. It's pretty simple, but in my opinion, if you have a bigger system or even a smaller system like a 3x84 HP, then I think it's already interesting to have this sequencer in there. Maybe have the sequencer controller, but you can do a lot with the analog trigger sequencer, the A-155 from Doepfer also. So please give it a go. They're really good builds. They're not extremely expensive, but then again, it's a simple sequencer, but with, in my opinion, many possibilities. So hope to see you soon. If you want to support me more, please join me on my Patreon page. That would be really helpful. Also, we'll put down in the description the affiliate link to this sequencer. So if you buy at Thomann, you follow my link, or you even buy something else at Thomann after you follow my link, I will get a small percentage, and this will get the channel running and supplying you with these videos. So give this video a thumbs up, and I would like to thank you for watching and hope to see you next time. Bye bye.